If you're anything like me, you probably haven't actually finished getting your winter and your spring plants actually planted out yet. But to ensure that we don't end up with gaps when the first harvests are coming in, we do want to continue sowing. While many of these things can be direct sown, if we do actually sow them into trays and pots, then it gives us a 4 to 8 week head start on that plant, and of course then a quicker harvest and more mature plants that we're going to be able to put out straight into the bed once our other plants come out. These are also going to manage with pests like slugs and snails much better than if we do direct sow them. However, if you're just going to run out of time and you haven't got the chance to do this, then direct sowing them is also worth a go, and just sow them a little bit thicker and thin them out as the plants get a little bit bigger and you find out what sort of pest damage or pressure that you have. From this month and next, we'll also be really looking at plants that are going to be taking us into winter and spring next year as well. So it'll give you a head start on your harvest next year by being that little bit more organised. So the first of these definitely do want to be got in the first week, ideally of June, but definitely by mid-June. I wouldn't go any later than that. They can all be direct sown, or you can sow them in pots if you do have a lot of issues with slugs and snails or mice and things like that. So the first of those is going to be courgettes, our summer squash, and then our winter squash as well. The smaller varieties of winter squash are definitely easier to get matured than the larger varieties from this point in the year. And then we have sweet corn that actually grow pretty quickly, once again can be direct sown, and then we have cucumbers as well. For our beans, the runner beans can be sown, once again they want to be done very, very early, but French beans we can continue sowing throughout the month. For brassicas, we're looking at winter or Savoy cabbages, broccoli and purple sprouting broccoli. So the broccoli that we have in the supermarkets is called Calabrese, so make sure you've got the right varieties for what you want. And then the purple sprouting broccoli is the smaller stems. Cauliflower for autumn harvest, kale and calyx, and then Swedes. All these brassicas are things in theory that you could sow directly, however I find them better to be sown in cells. The Swede is probably one that most people do direct sow rather than do in cells. And then we have our salady bits, so lettuce. You do want to look for varieties that are going to deal with the summer heat a little bit better. So Maravilla di Verano, for example, is a very good one at dealing with the summer heat. We can keep succession sowing spring onions and beetroot. This could also be done directly or into cells. Celery also grows really quite quickly from a sowing at this point in the year. So if you are going to do that, you're going to want to do that in the first 2 weeks of this month. And then we also have chicory and endive. For direct sowing, we're looking at carrots as well. If you have some potatoes that you haven't popped in yet, then it's also not too late for them. Herbs would be parsley, basil, dill and coriander. And then for our flowers, we're looking at 2 different categories here. So we're looking at our annuals that are reasonably fast to grow, which would be things like calendula, nasturtiums, sunflowers, nigella and cornflowers. And then we have our biannuals, which would be things like sweet williams, foxgloves, honesty, sweet rocket and Canterbury bells.